Hello everyone, I'm Đức Trung with VTV International. This is the English Bulletin VTV News coming to you live from Hanoi. First, let's get you up to date with the headlines. U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations voices concern over EC during a Hanoi visit. Vietnam voices opposition to Chinese ships sinking Vietnamese boat in the EC. And later, the Ministry of Defense officially inaugurated a peacekeeping center in Hanoi. On to the first update of the hour. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng has said Vietnam has pledged its active contribution to the UN's peacekeeping efforts in a meeting with UN Under-Secretary General for Field Support Amira Haq in Hanoi on Tuesday. The pledge followed Vietnam's deployment of 2 officials to join the UN peacekeeping force in southern Sudan. The Prime Minister highlighted that Vietnam would be prepared to send military, medical staff, engineering and IT units to join the UN peacekeeping forces. He briefed the UN Under-Secretary General on tensions in the EC. Amira Haq said Vietnam has set an example to the world in socio-economic development and hoped that Vietnam will be an exemplary nation in securing peace, stability and development. She recalled the UN General Secretary's statement right after the Chinese oil rig deployment, urging for a respect of peace and international law in resolving the issue. She agreed to convey the message to the UN chief as part of efforts to ensure peace and stability. National Assembly Chairman Nguyễn Sinh Hùng received in a delegation from the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations in Hanoi on Tuesday. Leading the visit was Senator Benjamin Cardin, who is also the chairman of the East Asia and Pacific Affairs Subcommittee. The situation in the EC was a highlighted topic of discussion.
How are you?
During the meeting, National Assembly Chairman Nguyễn Sinh Hùng reiterated Vietnam's stance on the illegal placement of Chinese oil rig Hải Dương Cu-981 in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, infringing upon Vietnam's sovereignty and threatening the peace, stability, security and freedom of navigation in the region. Senator Benjamin Cardin stressed the U.S. Senate strongly opposed China's provocative and unilateral acts. He called for all sides to settle the tension through peaceful means and in accordance with international regulations. During the talks, National Assembly Chairman Nguyễn Sinh Hùng highlighted the flourishing relations between Vietnam and the U.S., particularly after the establishment of a comprehensive partnership. He stressed that Vietnam highly values its cooperative ties with the U.S. Meanwhile, Senator Cardin underlined U.S. commitments to developing its relations with Vietnam, calling for both sides to push for strong developments for the benefits of both nations.
Now, according to the latest updates, China's drilling rig Hải Dương Cu-981 was moved at around 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, local time. The oil rig was moved by 2 Chinese vessels at the speed of 4 nautical miles per hour. At 10:30 a.m. the same day, the oil rig was left in its new position, which is 25 nautical miles southwest from Chiton Island, a part of the Paracel archipelago. However, the Chinese oil rig's new position is still within Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. The 10 crew of Da Nang fishing ship DNA 90152 were successfully rescued after being rammed by a Chinese vessel at around 4 p.m. on Monday, some 17 nautical miles to the southwest of the Hải Dương Cu-981. Continuous cases like this around the Paracels showed increasing Chinese aggression. However, Vietnamese fishermen persevere with the help of the authorities.
The media has gathered at Ms. Hua's house. Having overcome the Chengdu hurricane in 2006, DNA 90152 was not so fortunate this time. Ms. Hua received news that the ship was completely destroyed by continuous Chinese ramming attacks. Our crew reported that the Chinese had rammed the ship. Other ships have rescued them. Recently, they said now it was more important to rescue our brothers. News of the ship's loss was reported back to the mainland. But the most heated concern now is how fishermen, or rather paracels, are coping and the damage done to the ships on their way home.
Our director decided to give maximum support to the ship owner and their crew.
At Thọ Quang Fishing Dock, Da Nang, fishermen are set on the task. Information on the sunk ship hasn't shaken them at all.
We are angered but not worried. With the fishery control protecting the seas, we still go to work as normal, protecting our seas. Supporting our fishermen is our task, responsibility, and primary function. We will increase our forces to stand side by side with the fishermen in the protection of our sovereignty.
Together with the protection of the authorities, these days, messages of solidarity and togetherness from the nation are being sent to resilient fishermen who spend days and nights at sea.
On Tuesday, in response to media questions about Vietnam's reaction to an incident in which a Vietnamese fishing boat was rammed by a Chinese ship and later capsized, Foreign Ministry spokesman Lê Hải Bình stated China's actions are a violation of Vietnam's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the East Sea, running counter to the spirit of the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the East Sea, DOC, complicating the East Sea situation. Once again, Vietnam requests China stop its inhumane acts causing damage to life, property, and the legitimate interests of Vietnamese fishermen, respect international law, and provide proper compensation for Vietnamese fishermen. In response to China's move of its illegal oil rig on Tuesday morning, spokesman Bing said the new position of the Haiyang Shuyou 981 oil rig still lies completely within the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf of Vietnam, over which Vietnam holds full jurisdiction. Vietnam strongly opposes China's move and requests China to immediately withdraw the oil rig and escort ships out of Vietnamese waters and to not repeat any similar actions. Now, also on Tuesday, Japan urged China to exercise restraint in the East Sea after an incident on Monday in which a Chinese vessel sank a Vietnamese fishing boat in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone. Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera said the move posed a serious problem, noting that facts around the incident need to be revealed in a steady manner within the international community. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suk told a press conference in Tokyo that it was an extremely dangerous action that could threaten people's lives. Previously, China's official Xinhua news agency had wrongfully claimed the opposite, that the Vietnamese fishing vessel had capsized in the East Sea because it was harassing and colliding with a Chinese fishing boat. The recent provocative acts of China in the East Sea have sparked concerns in the international community. In the following days, we'll be holding interviews on VTV News with a number of experts, academics, and friends of Vietnam on their thoughts on the situation. Today, on this live edition of VTV News, we'll connect with Mr. James Zumwalt. Lieutenant Colonel Zumwalt is a veteran from the American War in Vietnam. He is also author to the book Bare Feet, Iron Will, Stories from the Other Side of the Battlefields. He's made some 50 trips to Vietnam since the end of the war and considers Vietnam his second country. We'll now try to connect to Mr. Zumwalt in the United States. Hello, Mr. Zumwalt. Thank you very much for joining us on VTV News today.
Thank you very much for asking me to join you.
Well, can you share some thoughts on the recent developments between China and Vietnam in the East Sea, particularly the deployment of an illegal oil rig by China in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf?
I do find the move by China to be very provocative. I don't know if you have the Vietnamese equivalent to this, but the expression of the neighborhood bully is applicable to what China is doing now. They are the regional bully because they're the biggest military power in the region, and they are trying to flex their muscle.
Well, what is your opinion on China's claims? Do they have any legal basis to it?
China ideally would like to lay claim to as much territory as they can in the South China Sea. As I understand it now, they're laying claim to about 70% of it. From what I've been able to ascertain in investigating the issue, it seems to me that China does not have a claim to many of the places that it is stating it does have a claim to. China has tried to look at things from an historical perspective, but under the United Nations Land of Sea Treaty, history doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the terms that the signatories to the agreement had signed off on. And China, I believe, signed off several years ago on the agreement. So it is bound by those terms, and history is not something that is recognized under the treaty.
Now, as you might have known, during recent days, Chinese ships have been ramming into Vietnam's enforcement crew. Where do you see this going in the future?
Well, I think that this is a continuous effort on the part of the Chinese to test the resolve of the Vietnamese. And there comes a point in time where a nation has to decide we've been pushed enough and now we need to react. I don't see that yet as far as the situation between China and Vietnam goes, but I think it is important also for Vietnam to recognize that they do not want to get in a situation where they are dealing with China alone. I think Vietnam needs to try to coordinate their efforts along with the other countries in the region that are encountering these same problems with China, the Philippines, Brunei, and have a united front.
Now, Mr. Zumwalt, you are a longtime friend of Vietnam. During this particular time, is there anything that you would like to say to the Vietnamese people?
Well, having spent some time in the ground during the war in Vietnam, I have an appreciation for the patience of the Vietnamese people, and I think they need to exhibit that same patience now.
And if you had the chance, what would you like to say to the Chinese side?
Well, China is trying very hard to be a superpower on the level of the United States. Being a superpower, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. And one of those responsibilities is that you try to reduce tensions rather than build them up. And so if China wants to be a superpower, I would tell them they've got to start acting like one.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Zumwalt, for joining us today, and we wish you all the best.
Quite welcome. Thank you very much, and I look forward to returning to Vietnam at some point.
Yes.
All right. Bye-bye.
And that was our interview with Lieutenant Colonel James Zumwalt, a veteran from the American War in Vietnam. We will continue to bring you the latest updates on the East Sea situation and also exclusive interviews with related people on this subject in our coming bulletins. Moving on now to other updates. Vietnam's National Assembly deputies on Tuesday discussed the draft revisions to the law on housing and the draft revisions to the law on real estate. According to deputies, the current law on housing has yet to include a mechanism or policies to encourage investment in social or rental housing projects. Participants also suggested that housing development should target different groups of customers across a diverse range of housing types, including apartment buildings, houses for sale and for rent. Furthermore, low-income people need to be provided with easy access to housing loans in order to improve housing conditions for all segments of the population. The draft revisions to the real estate law was also discussed, with many deputies saying more adjustments are needed to ensure consistency between the real estate law with other related laws such as the land law, housing law, and investment law. Deputy Prime Minister Vũ Văn Ninh had a working session on the economic status of Ho Chi Minh City with the city's People's Committee on Tuesday. Representatives of the Ho Chi Minh City People's Committee reported on the fiscal situation and progress in the equitization of state-owned enterprises in 2014. The economic growth rate remained stable during May, and growth for the first 5 months of the year saw an increase. Most economic indicators, including export revenue, retail, and wholesale, have increased over the same period of last year. From now until next year, 30 state-owned enterprises are expected to be equitized. The committee also made proposals for economic, social, and cultural development in the southern metropolis in the following months. In the latter half of our bulletin, the Ministry of Defense officially inaugurated a peacekeeping center in Hanoi. And later, Da Nang City bolsters work-related IT learning to improve link between education institutions and employers. That's coming up next on VTV News. Stay tuned.
Exotic Vietnam is an intriguing blend of many charms. This land is where all manner of stunning landscapes await like a visual feast, rivaled only by the beauty of its people and their abundantly rich tradition and culture. Here is where you can relive the past in richest color or live it up in the bright lights of the big city. With so much more to offer, Vietnam is simply unforgettable.
Welcome back to VTV News live from Hanoi. The Vietnamese Ministry of Defense officially inaugurated the Vietnam Peacekeeping Center on Tuesday in Hanoi. Vietnamese officials and a United Nations delegation attended the launch ceremony.
Addressing the opening ceremony, Vietnamese officials confirmed that Vietnam has prepared carefully to participate in the United Nations peacekeeping activities.
This move is an important decision of the party and state, showing the consistent foreign policies which respect peace, cooperation, development, and proactive international integration. It marks a new step forward in the international integration process of our country and our military.
Vietnam's Peacekeeping Center functions as an advisory and training agency for the Ministry of Defense, which manages the operations of the Vietnam Peacekeeping Force.
The participation in United Nations peacekeeping activity contributes to the success of the country's foreign affairs and heightens Vietnam's stance and image in the international stage. It also shows that Vietnamese love peace and are making efforts to build a peaceful and prosperous world without conflicts.
Vietnam's participation to the UN's peacekeeping force was also acknowledged by the UN's Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations.
They have taken it over a long time. They considered it very carefully. So I think it is a very well thought, carefully thought out decision. And they are starting in slow steps. And I think this is a very commendable way to go. I have full confidence. It is, they are excellently trained. I think the foundations are very strong. So we certainly look forward to the contribution.
The Ministry of Defense gave the decisions, which were approved by State President Trương Tấn Sang, to appoint the two first Vietnamese military officers as the liaison officers at the UN mission in South Sudan.
At the beginning of June, I will leave Vietnam for Uganda. There is a United Nations base there. I will be trained in 1 week as a liaison officer in Uganda and then fly to South Sudan to take the mission.
On December the 4th, 2013, Vietnam Ministry of Defense signed the decision to establish the Vietnam Peacekeeping Center. With its heroic tradition, experience and capacity, coupled with its serious and careful preparations, the Vietnamese armed forces are expected to successfully perform the missions in the UN's peacekeeping operations.
Now, in recent years, IT human resources have dramatically increased, and Da Nang has many software companies, while the city is determined to apply e-governance and invest in a centralized IT park. Despite the large number of IT graduates this year, skills shortfall remains a challenge, so there is a need to improve the link between education institutions and employers.
This is a training course for 30-year students at Da Nang FPT University at FPT Software. Besides access to the realities of working at real companies, students also have the chance to actually take part in real projects. This is completely new knowledge to university students and should help them find work once they leave university.
I hope this will be a useful experience after my graduation, and at the end of this course, I will try to achieve an FS certificate. With this, I can work for the company while still going to university.
Most students have good knowledge, but they lack skills needed in a business environment. May that be group working, reporting, or something as basic as commitment and discipline.
Student weaknesses is said to be the product of the lack of links between educators and businesses. In the light, FPT University, Duy Tân University, and Da Nang Polytechnics have worked with software companies to develop their curriculums and have students acquire a professional working approach and improve their vocational skills.
In FPT University's curriculum, after 5 terms of university training, students will be sent to company for real-life training for 1 term. The contents of the training are negotiated between the university and the company.
Da Nang City should have a bright high-tech future as an IT park will be developed in Hoa Liên Commune, Hoa Bang District. This project will not only attract enterprises looking for investment, but will also create about 25,000 IT jobs. Therefore, training a good quality IT workforce is a key issue.
An action month for children focused on stamping out violence and abuse was launched in the central province of Thừa Thiên Huế yesterday morning. The event drew the participation of more than 800 children and many locals from all walks of life. The Action Month aims to promote education, protection, and care of children. This year's month will cover entertainment activities such as a summer camp and a football tournament for thousands of children. In other news, local authorities of the central province of Quảng Nam continued its restoration plans of the historic Kỳ Anh Tunnel site in order to preserve this valuable historical site from serious damage. Accordingly, with total investment of over $184 million, the restoration plans will cover a 430-hectare area and a system of 32-kilometer-long underground passageways. Kỳ Anh Tunnel previously went through some small-scale restoration projects, but it failed to stop the site's decline. This time, the restoration is expected to thoroughly upgrade important historical items and improve local facilities to turn the whole area into a major tourist attraction of Quảng Nam province. Up next, let's take a quick look at a few online articles about Vietnam. Danish processing group Aspersion will close a deal for the plant in Vietnam it currently leases in the summer, as it plans to ramp up production in the country, according to an article on undercurrentnews.com. Aspersion will increase production from 40% of its 10,000 metric ton capacity to fully utilize the plant as part of a 24-month business plan, said its CEO Claus Nielsen. As a result, the company will go from employing 300 to about 700 workers. Foodbusinessnews.net reports Cargill has opened its first cocoa technology transfer center in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu. The center, which was built at a cost of $60,000, will be the first center to serve as a cocoa training campus for about 2,000 farmers in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, Đồng Nai, and Bình Thuận provinces. Together with other technical training programs, it will help farmers improve yields by 30% to 50% in 3 years. The company said it hopes the new center will equip farmers to thrive by providing the right skills and expertise. The next story comes from TTRweekly.com. The Vietnam National Administration of Tourism estimates the country welcomed over 745,000 international travelers in April, representing an increase of 21.51% over the same month last year. China was again the top producer with over 216,000 visits, growing 41.56%, followed by South Korea, Japan, the United States, and Malaysia. All of the country's top markets are in the Asia-Pacific region, with the exception of the US and Russia. The bulk of arrivals in April passed through the two main aviation gateways, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City.
Today's figures begin with a story from Tuổi Trẻ News. The People's Committee of Central Thanh Hóa Province and a Vietnamese group broke ground on a $57 million golf course and international standard resort project on Sunday. The FLC Samson Golf Links, to be built on an area of 92.4 hectares, will consist of an 18-hole golf course, high-standard villas and hotels, and an eco-friendly system including trees, lakes and greenswards. The project is slated to be completed within 10 months from now. According to worldcoffeepress.com, plans are afoot in Vietnam to uproot nearly 100 million coffee trees as part of a replanting initiative. It is a process that will not only limit the amount of coffee that the country can grow, but it will also impact export incomes over the course of the next few years. The average age of the coffee trees are getting too high. Trees that have been exposed to over 2 decades worth of harvest are likely to average around 1 ton of beans per hectare. That number is remarkably low when compared to much younger trees that can yield 150% more crop. Vietnam is forecast to earn some $12.12 billion from exporting agroforestry fishery products in the first 5 months of 2014, up 10.4% year-on-year, said Vietnam Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development on Monday. GlobalPost.com reports that in January to May period, Vietnam plans to earn $5.94 billion from overseas sales of agricultural products, up 5.1%, while its export revenue from forestry products is likely to stand at $2.46 billion, up 13.8% year-on-year.
And that's also the last piece of news we have for you in this hour. Before saying goodbye, let's take a quick look at today's weather forecast. This is the end of VTV News for this hour. Thank you very much for being here with us, and goodbye for now from Hanoi.